Hey there, it's John Paulus, and it's Life's Potluck Buffet o'clock somewhere. All right, so today's card is card 7. Say I am rather than I could be. When you are considering a work identity, make it a goal to say convincingly and calmly to yourself and others, I am X. And I do X, rather than I could be X, I could do X. Say one work identity that you would have said I could to, now say I am. This exercise is in line with the thinking of cards like translation is your enemy. It's card number 5. It is also in line with the you are what you hate card. Card number 38. Because those are ways, it's like card number 5, translation is your enemy, because it is asking you to not, because could be is translation, am is fact. Am is original language. And what I mean by that is that saying I am is stating a fact plainly, whereas saying I could be is projecting the fact that you aren't quite. And that's why I say it's like translation, because projecting the fact that you aren't quite is what translation does. Translation just isn't quite the original language. And in that same way, I could be is not quite a fact. Whereas I am is a fact. So when we're speaking about work identities that we're looking to inhabit, being able to say confidently, I am something, is the goal. Now, card 38 is important to this card because you'll notice it says, make it a goal to say convincingly and calmly to yourself and others, I am X and I do X, rather than I could be X and I could do X. Convincingly and calmly are the key words. Do you remember on card 38, we talked about how when you say something repeatedly as if to be protesting to yourself that it's true, that you're not saying something that's true. Or in the case that you're denying something, that doesn't work either. When you're saying it repeatedly or in a agitated way or in a overly forceful way. Because there's a difference between firm confidence, which is convincing, and desperate forcefulness, which is not convincing. When we're talking about ways of speaking and delivering a message, it's that calm confidence that says you know what you are and you are saying it out loud. And the first person who knows that that's a fact might be you, and it might be somebody else. But as soon as you find out it is a fact for yourself, then you're in the position to say, I am, rather than I could be. So why don't we try this right now? Think of a work identity that you might have said I could to. Choose an identity from your past, because then you'll see the strength of this exercise. Think of a work identity that you might have said, oh, I could do that to in the past. I'm going to think of that identity as radio broadcaster. I did do some radio work when I was younger, and it was a legitimate thought that I would pursue that as a career. But I never really got around to that. I thought of the path that I was on as being a different one and not being compatible with the broadcaster path. Now, and you'll remember from the historical identity card when I said in my historical marker that I was a broadcaster. So now I can say I am a broadcaster, and I know what I mean when I say that, and I can say that. In the past, when that work was work that I had done but didn't really feel like I was doing that work or going to do that work. And I knew it could be an option because of some experience I'd had, but didn't feel like I fully embraced that identity. That is the could be area where you don't feel like you could fully embrace an identity. And sometimes it's because you're making choices. Honestly, most of the time, the could be thing is not a matter of lack of confidence in your abilities. It's lack of confidence in whether or not that identity suits you. And that's something that's a really excellent thing to work on. Understanding why you were saying I could be to a particular identity, as in my case of the broadcaster identity, and what would make you say I am to that identity. So what made me say, oh, I don't know, I could be, was a recognition of the fact that I had some skills and experience in that regard, but that I didn't see myself as that identity at that time in a professional sense, and at that time that was the only way I could really see it. But now, thinking about this as an identity, because back in that time, I was considering this as a job identity, as a work identity. Card 1 asks us to think about everything we do in life as work, just different types of work. And back in the time that I'm talking about, I conceptualized this radio broadcaster or broadcaster identity as having to align with a job identity and not as a hobby identity or a volunteer identity, which means to me that I took it seriously and felt compelled or a need to do it in the way that we have, in the way that we think about how things that we're passionate about and that we do for self-care, those are really hobbies. And things that we feel compelled to do for others tend to be different, right? They can be paid work, they can be volunteer work, but they don't tend to be what we describe as hobbies most of the time. There are some cases where that happens, but as a general rule, I like to keep the hobbies for self-care. Thinking about the broadcaster identity now, because I am doing the work of the broadcaster in my mind, and because I'm doing it for others, for you, thank you for listening, I can now say to myself and feel comfortable saying I'm a broadcaster, whereas before I couldn't. So in that, you see my shift from I could be, I could have been, to I am. And how that shift happens for you is something for you to determine what your litmus test is for being able to say I am. And that's all that matters in the world, is what your litmus test is. I think we go through life too often imagining that others set the exams for what we can and cannot say, especially about our work. Sometimes we cede that to others. This card, along with all of the 55 cards in Life's Potluck Buffet, show you ways to get that back for yourself, so that when it comes to saying who you are the only judge. And that's a powerful thing. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, subscribe, and head to lifespotluck.com for more. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.